Hi, what's up? So first things first, I do want to mention and I do want to clear up that this video isn't going to be exclusively about me showing you or teaching you how to use your rb67 for night photography. I also went out and shot some photos. I'll of course leave that part of the video tagged somewhere on the timeline just in case anyone wants to skip ahead. By the way, I found my Carhartt beanie. If you're still here, hi, hello. If I'm being honest, a mamiya rb67 really isn't built for night photography, clearly. The first thing you have to understand is what you need. To keep this very short, you only need a shutter release cable and a very sturdy tripod. I'll have links to both the cable and the tripod down in the description, just in case anyone's curious as to what I'm using. But yeah, that's really all you need. Well, no, you also need a light meter, but you can just use any light meter off of the App Store. They work just as fine if I'm being honest. Besides that, I do want to clear up that there's two ways that I know of to per se shoot at night with a mamiya rb67, and I'll be showing you how to do both. The way I do it, and probably not the best way to do it, is to connect a shutter release cable to the shutter, focus on what you want to shoot, adjust the shutter speed and or aperture, and hit the cable. Now of course that seems easy and extremely straightforward, but I'm pretty sure most of you are in this video because you want to shoot something that's longer than a second. Now, unfortunately, rb67 lenses can only go down to 1 second, but there is a workaround for that. Same process, plug in the cable release, adjust your aperture, but this time use the T setting on the camera. I think the T stands for timer, but what the T setting does is that it just keeps the shutter open. This of course presents another issue. You need to close the shutter. So for this, I highly recommend just switching the shutter wheel off of the T setting. This is where a really sturdy tripod comes in because you do run the risk of moving the camera with this small little movement. Although once you do get to longer exposures such as 8 seconds, this small little movement is insignificant when it comes to camera shake. I do want to mention that you don't have to completely switch the T setting to 1 second to close the shutter. A slight little budge is enough to close the shutter. And if you're not convinced with moving the shutter wheel, you also have another option to close the shutter. Same process, aperture, T setting, shoot, but this time you can just crank the shutter lever ever so slightly to close the shutter. And well, that's the first method. Now the second method is arguably the more professional way to do long exposures on this camera. Now this does involve using the mirror up dial on the side of the lens. This is a slightly different process, but it's not really complicated. So first step, compose the image and make sure your focus is locked in. Again, set your settings, aperture, shutter speed. Now flip the dial on the side of the lens over to mirror up. You just lift it a bit and turn. You can also do this way before composing the photo. For some reason, I just thought this order made sense. Once this is on comes the second to last step. You fire the shutter, which is going to close the aperture blades and flip the mirror inside up. Just to clarify, you have not taken the photo yet, although this does mean that you can no longer compose because again, the mirror is flipped up. Lastly, assuming that your cable is already connected to the thread on the side of the lens, fire the shutter with the cable release, with the appropriate shutter speed of course, and that's it, you shot your photo. This time with a slightly decreased possibility of having camera shake, again because you are completely bypassing the mirror slap that happens when you shoot the shutter. Again, use the T setting if you have an exposure over 1 second, and respectively spin the shutter dial and or slightly crank the mirror lever to close the shutter. I think this all makes sense. I sure hope so. So that's really all I have to teach, or rather tell you. I could go on and get more artistic with shutter speed and what aperture to use and how to meter properly, but I just figured I'd leave that for another video. Just a really quick recap as to how I do it. Set up your tripod, put the camera on the tripod, connect the cable, set my settings. Assuming that this scene has a reading of f3.8 at 4 seconds, I'm using the T setting, hitting the shutter, counting to 4 seconds, and closing the shutter. Again, with whatever method you prefer, whether it's spinning the shutter wheel or slightly cranking the lever. Congrats, maybe you possibly learned something. Now of course you have to use all of this information out in the real world, so enjoy some of the photos that I made in the past couple of days. I do want to give a little bit of insight as to the whole process of me making this video. Right after the first shot, I noticed that my cable fell to the floor. It wasn't until I got to this house that I realized that the tip of my shutter release cable was stuck inside of the shutter. So yeah, my cable broke inside of my shutter. So that was its whole process. And in turn delayed the whole process of me making this video by a whole day. Now, just in case this does happen to you, you can get the broken piece out. I'd recommend, and this is what I used, I'd recommend grabbing a screwdriver with a tip that's small enough to fit into the thread. So yeah, grab your camera and put the screwdriver into the shutter wheel and slightly spin it. And yeah, you should be able to get that broken piece out. I mean, I did. You could also put glue at the end of a toothpick and hope for the best, but I really don't recommend that. I'd really suggest you using a small screwdriver. Some of these photos also have a very weird splotch next to the brightest part of the highlights. I really can't tell you what this is or where this came from, but I do want to let you know that I had a incident while I was developing these rolls. Just in case you're curious, I spilled my Blicks all over my counter, and yeah, that left me without enough Blicks to do 2 120 rolls. It could be this, could have been the color developer, I'm not sure. That's all I have for you for this week. Shorter video, I know, or at least I think it's short. It should be short. Next week I will be shooting night photography again, just to somewhat close this unintentional series of night photography. You can definitely let me know what film you want me to shoot for next week's video. Your options are Portrait 400 or Cinestill 800T. As always, follow me on Instagram. My ad is like right here or down in the description, as always. Also, consider subscribing if you don't completely find me annoying. Like the video if you like it. Share this video with your mom. And comment literally anything. I don't care. Although you could tell me what film you want me to use for next week. Yeah, that's it. Bye. I really wonder how long it's going to be until someone mentions these parts of the videos.